Okay, Rabotai, here we are, another Sunday, and we are starting chapter 4, Perek Revi'i of Masechet Sanhedrin. The Perek is called Echad Dinei Amanot. And what we're dealing with is really a continuation of Masechet Sanhedrin, which is how the court process works, what's done, how it's done. And today we're going to be talking about two types of court cases and the similarities and differences of them. We already know we have certain court cases which are monetary, about money. You owed me, the guy owed a loan, how much he owes, loans and admissions of loans. That's usually monetary cases. And then the other big case is capital punishment. Someone did an avera, that he's hayab mita, that he's subject to the death penalty. In order to kill somebody, in order to give someone the death penalty, you have to have a court, which is known as a Sanhedrin Katana, a small Sanhedrin, which is every city can have of 23 judges. This we already learned way back, Daf Gimel. So now this Mishnah picks up with more of the similarities and differences between them. So let's look in the Mishnah inside. Echad dinei mamanot ve'echad dinei nefashot. Both cases of money and cases of capital punishment, bidrisha u'v'hakira, they require from the Torah drisha u'hakira, right? Drisha u'hakira, we talked about that last week, just to explain. Drisha u'hakira are the investigative questions that are asked to the witnesses to make sure that the testimony is accurate. They include such things as when, what day did it happen, what year, what month, the where and the when, as well as the what and the how. Usually, chakira is the where and the when, what day, what month, what year, where were you when it happened, and then drisha is usually the further questions. What was he wearing? What color was that? What color was this? How exactly did it happen? That is drisha. So anyway, you need to ask them for both cases of money and cases of capital punishment. Shneimar, how we know this? It says in pasuk, Mishpat echad yeh lachem v'darashta v'hakarta. It says further, and so what does that mean? It should be the same for you, monetary cases as well as capital punishment cases. You do them the same way, with drisha or hakira, with the investigative question. Now, ma ben dinim amanot lidinei nafashot. What's the difference between dinei mamanot, money cases, and capital? You just told me they're one and the same, and now the Mishnah says, tell me what's the difference. There has to be some difference. We already know that one's with 3 and one's with 23. So what's the other difference? Dinei mamanot b'shlosha. Dinei mamai, monetary cases only need 3 judges. Dinei nefashot b'eslim shlosha, you need 23. Dinei mamanot potchim ben l'zchut ben l'chova. Dinei nefashot potchim l'zchut ve'en potchim l'chova. When it comes to monetary cases, the judges can start deliberating and they can start asking questions to the witnesses, whether to make someone lose money or to make someone gain money. The truth is, in a monetary case, most times someone's gaining and someone's losing because you have 2 people and you're going back and forth. Who's going to get the money? So you can start with an obligation, or you can start with an obligation, or you can start with how he's innocent. When it comes to capital punishment cases have to start with reasons for his innocence. You have to start in a way to make him innocent when it comes to capital punishment cases. Dinei mamanot matil al pi echad ben l'zchut ben l'chova. Dinei mamanot matil al pi echad l'zchut ben l'chova. When it comes to monetary cases, all what you need is 1 judge a simple majority. You have 3 judges, 2/1, and you can say either he's liable to pay or he's free and doesn't have to pay. But when it comes to capital punishment, matin al pi echad l'schut, val pi shenayim l'chova. In order to free him, all what you need is a simple majority, one judge extra, one judge more to agree that he is not guilty. But in order to make him guilty, he'll need to have 2 judges more to say guilty. So in practical cases, look at note 6. If you're in the art scroll, in practical terms, since capital cases require 23 judges, a defendant could be acquitted, right? Can be made not guilty on the basis of 12 to 11. So 12 will say he's not guilty, 11 say he is, he goes out. But in order to convict him, in order to kill him, you need 13 judges in favor of conviction. So it'll be 13 to 10, right? In 23 total. Because you need 2 more say he is guilty to kill him. Dinei mamanot, continuing in the Mishnah. Dinei mamanot, machzirin ben l'skut ben l'chova. When it comes to money, you can go back to the court case, you can go back to the case and reopen it, whether to make him guilty to pay it or to free him and make him get his money back. Either way, you have permission to retry the case. Capital punishment cases, if you're going to reopen the case or re-examine the case, you can only do it if you're trying to exonerate him, to make him not guilty. Don't kill him. But if you're going to try to reopen the case to kill him, then we're not going to reopen it. The whole reasoning here is, you have to understand, it's not that we're trying to be merciful to the guy and not kill him. If he deserves to be killed, we want to kill him. But we want to make sure that we're 100% right. Therefore, if you went through the whole court case and you came out that he's not to be killed, that's the verdict, and we leave it at that. Now we're not going to go back and try to kill him. And all these things, like we need two judges to agree, 2 more judges, 2 on a majority, in order to say, because we want to make sure that we're 100% certain. One is not enough. 1, 2. Okay, so when you look at all these things, just think about it that way. When it comes to money matters, any judge or any of their students who is in the Beit Din, they can all give reasons why this one's liable, why this one is patur, and everyone can speak. Everyone, even the students of the judges, can say reasons why this guy is not guilty, but not the students cannot say why he is guilty and needs to be killed. Only the judges themselves can give reasons for their conviction. When it comes to monetary cases, anyone who gives a reason why he is to be free and not pay can then later change his reasoning and give a reason why he should pay. Either way, he can change. When it comes to dinei nefashot, if you gave a reason for why he is guilty, needs to be killed, you could change it and give a reason why he should not be killed. But if you give a reason for him to be not killed, and then you want to go and change it for him to be killed, you cannot change the reasoning. You cannot change your reasoning. Now, that doesn't mean you can't change your verdict. I mean, the judge could change his, when the final take the vote, he can vote on the side that he needs to be killed, but he cannot propose a reasoning to make him guilty after he proposed a reason for him to be innocent. Okay? Once once you give him his zechut, you cannot go back and make him guilty. Dinei mamanot danim bayom v'gomrim balayla. When it comes to monetary cases, you start it in the daytime, you can even finish it at night. Dinei nefashot danim bayom v'gomrim bayom. When it comes to capital cases, it has to be started in the day, and you have to finish it during the day. Dinei mamanot gomrim bo bayom ben l'zchut ben l'chova. Dinei mamanot. You can conclude the matter in one day and already give the verdict right away. The only time you're able to end the capital punishment case in one day is if you're going to exonerate him or free him. But if you're planning to kill him, you cannot do it on that same day as the court case started. You would have to wait the next day. Reason for this, they say, is that you want to be able to see if you can find a reasoning to free him. So you want to give him some time. You don't give him too much time. We don't wait 25 years in order to kill the guy, not like the American justice system, but rather we would kill him the next day. So therefore, you don't give because when you give the verdict right afterwards, you have to kill him. So therefore, you cannot give the verdict for guilty on the same day you started the capital punishment case. You'll have to wait for the next day in order to give the verdict and then kill him. Therefore, don't start capital punishment cases Erev Shabbat or Erev Yom Tov. Why? Because you started on Friday and the guy's guilty. You're not able to say guilty until Shabbat. And on Shabbat, you can't kill the guy. It's supposed to kill someone on Shabbat or on Yom Tov. So therefore, you can never start a capital punishment case on Erev Yom Tov or Erev Shabbat. Dinei mamanot hatumchot v'taharot matchilin min hagadol. Dinei nefashot matchilin min hatzad. When it comes to regular cases of money, you can start with the judge who is the most prominent judge. So the way it worked in the Sanhedrin, or in the judges, the capital Sanhedrin, the main judge stand in the middle. Alphabet, the most prominent judge stand in the middle. And the other judges sat in a semicircle around him. The senior and better judge sat closer to the middle, and the ones with less experience or lesser qualified sat to the end, to the side. So when it came to monetary cases, you can start with the middle, with the most important, and you work your way around. But when it comes to dinei nefashot, when it comes to cases of capital punishment, you start with the side with the least qualified. The reason for that would be you want to hear what everyone has to say when it comes to capital punishment. You're trying again to get the real verdict. You don't want to kill him for a mistake. So therefore, if you start with the middle and the big rabbi says he's guilty, everyone's just going to go along. The same thing. If he says he's innocent, everyone will just go along with the greatest rabbi. But if you start with the side, no one feels that they need to follow what the youngest or least qualified judge said. Therefore, everyone would vote their conscience, and therefore you would come to a final and correct conclusion. Then the Mishnah said, "Hakol kesherin ladun dinei mamanot." Everyone can judge cases of mammon. Everybody. That Rashi says, "Vafilu mamzer." Even a mamzer, he can also judge cases of money. But not everyone can be sitting as a judge of 23 in order to put someone to death. Who could? Rather, only Kohen, Levites, and Yisraels whose daughters can marry Kohanim, meaning that their lineage is pure. This would exclude a mamzer. This would exclude the ger themselves, and this would also exclude a halal. A halal is a child of a Kohen and a woman he's not supposed to be with. So these people are not allowed to marry Kohanim, and therefore they would not be allowed to sit as judges and courts of 23 that deal with capital punishments. Okay, there's a long Mishnah. Any questions on the Mishnah, or we can move on? All right. So now we learned right at the start of the Mishnah, it said court cases of money or court cases of capital punishment, you have to ask the investigative questions, the drisha or hakiras. Now, the Gemara is going to say we have two places where we see that's not true. That when it comes to the name of manot, it comes to monetary cases, we do not ask the questions of investigative questions of where and when and what and how. We don't ask them. But our Mishnah says we do. So which one is it? Do we or do we not? Then it starts the Gemara. Do we really need these investigative questions by money? Or we know, but look at the following brayta. It says, Shtar shezamano katub echa misa b'shmita uvo edim amru hecha tamedin al shtar hazeh v'alo b'yom poni imanu yitem b'mokam poni shtar kasher ve'edim ve'edav kisherim. So the Gemara brings a brayta. The brayta story is as follows. This is the brayta. The case is, there's a star sitting in front of us. There's a document of obligation. Okay, so here is a document, for example, and on it is written that I owe money. Ephraim's not here, but I owe $10,000 to Ephraim. Okay, that's what it says. We have two witnesses, Reuben and Shimon, signed on it. And it says it happened on Aleph Nisan, the first of Nisan, in the Shemitah year. Now, you bring this document to court. So Ephraim brings this document to court, and he says, this is my document. These are the witnesses. He owes me $10,000. Now, I bring two witnesses that come and say, how could you guys have signed? Because the loan says it happened in New York. And they say, how could you have signed as you saw a loan happen on the first when he signed? And that Shemitah year, and you signed on that document, but you were with us in Florida on the first of Nisan. You could not have signed on that document in New York that you saw the loan. And the Braita there said, even though they say this, and they're right, still the star is kosher, and I still will owe $10,000 to a crime. And the Gemara says, what's the reason why it's kosher? Explain. The Gemara says that what happened was it was a delayed document, meaning the loan happened in the first of Adar. I borrowed $10,000 from Ephraim on the first of Adar in New York, but we never wrote a star. And then in the first of Nisan, Reuben and Shimon, who saw in New York that Ephraim lent to me money, who happened now to be in Florida on the first of Nisan, and there were these other two people, Levi and Yehuda. They're all in Florida now, but somehow there's a document being written up in Florida. But instead of writing that they're signing today, a post-dated star, they're making it sound as if they're dating it as the day it happened. And they're writing New York, but they're signing it in Florida because it happened later. They already sold the loan in New York, but this is now happening in Florida that they're there, and this is where they're signing it. And because that's a possibility, therefore, we would believe that the star is still kosher. That's what the Braita says. The Braita says we believe the star is kosher. They saw it in the right place, They're just signing it in a different place, and they're not telling us that it happened in New York and we're signing it in Florida. That's the missing information, but yet it remains kosher.
Even though they write it the place was in wrong place, I guess. Because they signed in New York, but they put on the document Florida, it's still kosher.
Right. They should have written that they're signing it in Florida, that the loan happened in New York and they're signing it in Florida, but they didn't write it that way. They're writing that the loan happened in New York and they're signing on it. It seems to be as if they're signing it as if they're in New York, but they are not clarifying it. But yet the shtar would be kosher because we can assume that's what happened. Now, the Gemara says, now the whole issue with this would be what? If you're telling me that you need to ask investigative questions, the first thing of the investigative question is the where and the when, right? Where was it and when was it? Now, if you're going to tell me you asked the questions and you found out that it wasn't the first of Adar that the loan actually happened, and the shtar said the first of Nisan, you have to throw out the whole thing. And I shouldn't owe any money to Ephraim because it doesn't match up. And yet we're saying it's a kosher shtar because, they saw it in Adar, but they're signing it in Nisan. They're just missing the information. It says they're signing it late and they're signing it in a different state, but still it's kosher. But why? If you're holding, you need to ask investigative questions. The investigative questions would throw the shtar out because it would not stand up to scrutiny. The Gemara says, now, if you think you have to ask investigative questions, why should we assume that it's a late, delayed signed shtar and from a different state? Why would we think that? If you have to ask investigative questions, we shouldn't think anything. We should just throw it out. It doesn't match the investigation. The shtar is possible. But yet that's not what we say. So it turns out that maybe we do not ask Drisha v'chakiras by money. From this brayta, that's what it seems. The Gemara now says, and we turn to 3283. Now, you're asking very good from the brayta. The Gemara says, but instead of asking from the brayta, ask from a Mishnah. The Mishnah is always stronger than a brayta. Therefore, if you're going to be asking, ask from the Mishnah itself. Ask from a Mishnah. There is a Mishnah that says, Shtareho hamuktamin pesulin v'hamucharim kesherin. The Mishnah says as follows. All right, so just a little bit background to understand this Mishnah, and then we'll figure out the question. If I'm borrowing money from Ephraim on Aleph of Adar, okay, the Mishnah says that if now we write up a shtar, we write up a document that I owe money to Ephraim, you're not allowed to date it a month back, meaning Shvat. You're not allowed to predate it. You're not allowed to put a date that's earlier than the actual loan happened. And the reason for that is, if I owe Ephraim money and we have a document that says that, then my land that I have, according to Allah, the land that I own, starts to belong to Ephraim if I can't pay it. So much so that even if I sell it to someone and then I can't pay the loan in time, Ephraim can come and take it from the person I sold it to and take that field for himself. He has a lien on the property. But if I predate it, then his lien will start a month in advance. And that's an illegal lien because he didn't lend the money until a month later. So he had no lien. So the guy who bought it does not have to give him back if it happened. It's example, he bought it the 10th of Adar. He bought my field. I made the loan with Ephraim on the 1st of Nisan. But we dated the document the 1st of Adar. So now Ephraim's going to go to him and say, oh, give it to me because my document says 1st of Adar. But he can't do that because he never loaned the money until the 10th of Adar and he bought it on the 1st of Adar. So therefore, it's an illegal lien. Therefore, the Chacham said, Predated shtarot are always popular. They're never good. However, v'amucharin kishenin, but post-dated documents are okay. Why? Because no matter when you're post-dating it, at that point, he does have a lien on it. Therefore, it's not an illegal lien. Okay, he forfeits his lien on the property for 4 weeks or whatever. But at the time you give him the lien, it is his. It is legit. Therefore, it would be kosher. Now, how is this show? How is it the same question on the Mishnah? If you're saying they need to ask the investigative questions that include the where and the when, so now you're going to come and tell me. You ask them the question, when was the loan? Oh, the loan was in the 1st of Adar. When was the star written? Right? Oh, 1st of Nisan. So the star doesn't add to the loan. The whole thing doesn't add up. Therefore, you would have to throw it out. But yet, the Mishnah itself says that post-dated documents are kosher. So how could it be? So we see the question is both from a Braita and from a Mishnah. So why did the Gemara start to ask the question from the Braita and not from the Mishnah? You can ask the same question from the Mishnah. Why did the Gemara ask the Braita? And why would you always want to answer a Mishnah over a Braita? Mishnah is more authoritative and people are more familiar with it. Therefore, you want to ask from there if you can ask from there rather than a Braita. So therefore, the Gemara's question is, why didn't we ask from this Mishnah? The Gemara says, "Hello, Kashya, the Adifa Mina Kamrinan." Because the question is stronger from the Braita than from the Mishnah. Why? The Braita said, "Da afilu echaber isam b'shmita, lo shchich anche demzofe, delek lemar shema ichru uchtavu, delo maran ishtare, afilu hachi kivan deshvit sofa mishtameten machshirinan." What does this mean? Very simple. The Braita said that was written on the star the 1st of Nisan in the Shemitah year. What happens at the end of the Shemitah year? It just happened. Remember, everybody was saying you should write a prusbul, right? Do a prusbul. Why are you doing a prusbul?
Annulment.
Say again?
Annulment of money or something.
Right.
Loan.
So everything a person owes, all the loans, they become annulled at the end of the Shemitah year. At the end of the Shemitah year. So now I have a star that says that Ephraim has a star that says that I owe him $10,000, and the loan happened on the 1st of Nisan in the Shemitah year. That means within like 5 months, that loan is going to expire, and I will never have to pay it back. So we might think, you know what, such a star must be a fake, because no one in their right mind will loan so much money 5 months before it all becomes patur, all of it becomes exempt. So therefore, I would think, the judges might think, that this star is a fake, because it was written wrong. Who's going to give that money? It's impossible for him. Will never give $10,000 5 months before all that money becomes goodbye. So maybe we should think it's a fake. Now we find out that it's post-dated. It doesn't add up to the investigative questions, and it's post-dated, and it's a Shemitah year. It's all the reasons to think that it's a fake star, and the judges should not make me have to pay him. Yet we say that it's still a good star. We don't ask the investigative questions. And the fact that it's written in the Shemitah year, okay, from Nisan to the end of the year is a few months, and therefore it's enough time for me to pay him back, and therefore he would loan it, and therefore it is kosher. That's why they asked the question from the Braita, because from the Braita it's much stronger because it's in the Shemitah year. Would it become a null? And you might think that it's a bigger lie. Yet we still believe the shtar, even though it's post-dated, even though it's in the Shemitah year, even though he loaned so much money right before it becomes nothing. we would still believe it. However, we're still left with the question. The question that our Mishnah says you need to ask investigative questions. And from the Mishnah and the Braita that we brought, it seems you do not need to ask investigative questions by monetary concerns, the monetary matters. So which one is it? The Gemara says, Mikol Malkum Kasha, it still remains a question. So the Gemara gives a siman and says, Siman Harpash. There are going to be 4 rabbis, and there's going to be 3 different reasons why there is no investigative questions from Dinei Mamanot. Amar Rabbi Hanina. Devar Torah, Echad Dinei Mamanot, Ve'echad Dinei Nefashot, V'disha V'chakira. Rabbi Hanina, the Chet, right, from Charpash. Rabbi Hanina says the truth is, all court cases, capital punishment, monetary cases, they all require investigative questions. Where, when, what, how. That's from the Torah level. However, as it says, one mishpat, one judgment you should have for monetary, one and the same judgment for capital. So why did the Chachamim come and say you shouldn't ask any investigative questions when it comes to monetary? The Rabbanan, they did this. Why did they do this? In order not to shut down the market and not to shut down credit and not to stop people from loaning money. And what does this mean? Explains it back in Daf Beis. Gimel, I'll explain it again. What it means is as follows. A prime loans me $10,000. Okay, and we have Reuben and Shimon watching the whole thing. Reuben and Shimon come to court to say that I owe Ephraim $10,000. But now the judges are asking them all these questions. Now, Reuben and Shimon are not professional witnesses. They just saw a loan and they saw many different loans. They start to ask them questions, and Reuben starts to mess up in his answering, right? And now what happens? Since Reuben cannot answer right, the judges are forced not to believe his testimony. And as such, Ephraim now loses $10,000 because I don't have to pay him anymore because the witnesses did not stand up to cross-examination. Therefore, and now, so what would be? Every time he gives a loan, he has to get professional witnesses and they have to document. It's going to be too much. Therefore, the Chacham said, we don't want Ephraim to stop loaning money. Therefore, you don't need to investigate too much when it comes to the witnesses. You hear the testimony and you go. You don't need to ask any of these investigative questions in order for people to be able to borrow money. Because in order for anything to happen, anyone wants to start a business, you need capital, you need to borrow money. There's a lot of money to put in. For example, you want to open a restaurant. You need to buy the tables, the chair, you need to pay the rent in advance, you know, the lighting, the chef, the food. No one really, I don't think most people don't sit with such money and opening restaurants. You need to have money from somewhere, you need to borrow it. So if you imagine the banks were giving out loans, and someone told me this happened in 2008 during the crash, that a lot of loan agency places were giving out loans and they made mistakes in the contracts or in the clauses or whatever it was. And because of that, a lot of the mortgages were dismissed. And as such, the bank lost a lot of money, and the bank started a run in the bank. The bank started to lose their money, and they weren't going to get their loans back. And some things had to close down. Because if you don't have a credit that can be believed, there is no more market. That's what Chacham didn't want to happen. Chacham didn't want the market to crash. They didn't want people not be able to live. And therefore they said, although it's true the Torah says you need to ask investigative questions when you come to monetary cases, we're going to take it away. You don't have to ask. Now, everyone's going to say, how can the Chacham do that? How can you just come and just throw out a mitzvah from the Torah? The Torah says you have to do it, and they Chacham just throw it out. If you take a look in note 32, if you have the article in front of you, it says, you take on the right column in the parentheses, it says in Hebrew, the words hefker, betin, hefker. What this means is that the betin actually from the Torah has a right to make a person's money worthless. They can take your stuff and say it's hefker. That's a privilege the betin has. And as such, if they can make your money hefker, right? So then they can do this as well and take away the investigative questions, because all it would be is it'll take away people from having to pay or making them pay. So when it comes to your money, Betin has a power to it because it's called Hefker Betin Hefker. Therefore, they were allowed to take away this requirement of the Torah to do the Shav Hakira. The Gemara said, now, if this is true, as we turn to 32b1, Ta'anu Ta'u Lo Yishamu. Sometimes, in certain cases, if a judge makes a mistake, the judge makes a mistake and he puts on a verdict, and it's a mistaken verdict, right? And he made someone lose money, the judges in certain cases would have to pay that person back. So now the Gemara says, if you're taking away the ability for the judges to ask investigative questions, then they should be potter from paying back when it comes to time when they have to pay back if they made a mistake. Why? They can say, you didn't let me do my job right. I needed to ask more investigative questions. And you told me, I can't. And since I couldn't, that's why I made the mistake. That's why I made a mistake. And therefore, I shouldn't have to pay because you're not letting me ask the question. We say, no, you can't. The judges cannot get away with that. They cannot say because of you. That's why you made a mistake. And you don't have to pay back. Why? Because again, the people who are lending the money, if they see that they can't get their money back, right? If the judges make a mistake and then they realize their mistake and they're not going to give them $10,000 back that they've caused someone to lose, they're not, what's it called? If they're not going to pay back what someone's going to do, then no one's going to want a loan, because otherwise they're going to feel that I can give a loan and potentially never get it back. I'll potentially never get it back. It's going to close the gates to the people who need to borrow money. And we don't want that to happen. So even though the judges are not allowed to ask investigative questions to monetary cases, if they did make a mistake, they would still have to pay back, because that would also lead to people not loaning money. Okay, so that is the first answer of Rabbi Hanina. Second answer, Rabbi Omar. It's different. You have to know which cases require and which cases don't require. So, a require investigative question. When it comes to dinei kinasot, penalty cases, it's a penalty, not penalty cases. Then you need to ask the investigative question, right? So some of the damages or something that they're paid, hit someone, they have to pay all those other things. They those penalties cannot require investigative questions, but hoda'at v'alava'ot, loans and admissions of loans, that does not require investigative questions. So in our mission, it says need to add investigative questions. Apparently, it's talking about penalty cases, whereas the other Mishnah that says you don't ask investigative questions, that's talking about loans and admissions about loans. Rav Papa Amar, Papa says the third reason. The Gemara says Papa said it all depends on the people in your court case, people in the court. If they look shady and shifty and fishy, and you're scared of them, they might be telling a lie, then you need to ask all these investigative questions. But if they look like good, trustworthy people, and obviously the judges have to be good judges of character, and then they would say, you don't need investigative questions. So it all depends on the people, the witnesses, the litigants, of how they are presenting themselves and how they're known, what's their reputation. If they're good and they present themselves good and they have a good reputation, then we don't have to assume that they are lying, and therefore you don't have to ask investigative questions. But if you have to assume that they're lying, then you would have to ask the investigative questions. In the Reish Lakish, the Reish Lakish Rameh, Rish Lakish says, like Rish Lakish, Rish Lakish brings down two psukim. It says in one, B'tzedek, Tishbot Amitecha, that with righteousness shall you judge, right? B'tzedek, one time it says righteousness, and then it says Tzedek, Tzedek, Tidor, righteousness, righteousness. What does this mean? How Ketzad? How do you do Tzedek? And then Tzedek, Tzedek. How Ketzad? It all depends. If the characters in the court case seem shady, then you're going to have to ask all these investigative questions. Tzaddik, tzaddik, you have to double check. But if it's a regular type of case, then kan bedin she'enu middleman. It's not in a tricky question. It's not in a tricky people. Then you can just do one tzaddik, one question, and you don't have to do the whole big drisha b'hakira. You can just ask simple questions. Ravashi Omar Matnita and Kiddush. The Mishnah is like we learned above. Any way that we learned, they're all acceptable. They're all halach al ma'isa, and Matnita Kiddushinan. Kera'e echad adin v'echad kshara. Then he says that Psukim, tzedek is actually teaching me something else. That sometimes you have to be right, and sometimes you have to compromise. In the Tanya, as it was taught in the Braita, tzedek, tirdof. What does this mean? Echad ladin, one tzedek means judgment, echad shara, and one means compromise. Ha ketzad, how do you have this? It all like so it's a case like this. You have two ships that are sailing towards each other. If they both and they're passing a narrow spot, if both of them are going to try to go in the same spot at the same time, they're both going to break and sink. Why would anyone want to do that? But rather, what should they do? Let one go and one waits on the side and let the other one go, and then here they go. Okay, son. If the boat, hold on a second. I missed one. Same thing if donkeys are going up on the narrow mountain, narrow path, only one little space. And they meet each other on this narrow space. If they both try to go up at the same time, I'm going to fall. If you wait for each other, then they will go. How is it done? Who gets first privilege to travel? If one boat or camel is loaded and the other one is not loaded, so if it's loaded versus unloaded, so let's say you have a ship that's loaded or a camel that's loaded, and you have a ship that's not loaded or a camel that's not loaded, the one that is loaded should be able to pass first. Okay, so it depends. What about close and far? How do we understand this close and far? The ship, look at note 14, the ship of camel that's closer to its hometown should give way to the one that's already distant from it. So if there's a ship that's very close to its house and there's a ship that's very far away from it, you should let the one that's very far away from it to go first. And the one that's closer to home should go second. So how you stand? What happens if they're both equal? They're both the same weight. They're both the same age. Then what? Then you should do a compromise between them. Then they should make a compromise, and one should pay the other for letting them go through. So you see from here, tzedek means to also compromise. let one go, and you wait, and then you go after. Tana Rabbanan Tzedek, you should run after righteousness. Another reason is, another explanation is, halach acher bedin yafeh. You have to go to a best betin that you could go to. Amari Elazar the Lord. Other than you go to Lord. Amar Yochanan ben Zakkai, the Beror Chayil. Yochanan ben Zakkai said, come to Beror Chayil, because that's where he was, and that's the good place to go. Hana, the Torah writer. Kol Rehaim bevoronei. When you heard the mill working in Bornei, it was telling us something. Shevua haben, shevua haben. They would say when the mill was grinding, it was a siman to the people that's going to be a Brit Milah today. What happened? Why are they saying that? Because at some point, the government forbade religious Jewish ceremonies, Brit, Hatunah, and stuff like that. So people wanted to get married. And people had children. They wanted to Brit Milah, but it was outlawed. So what did they do? Make Suda. They made a siman. They had the mill. The mill was making noise. People knew it was a Brit Milah. And people would show up to the place, and there'll be a Suda for the Milah. If Or Haner B'Rochayil, if you saw in Bevor Hayil, you saw a lot of candles in the windows, that means Mishtesham. That means it's going to be a feast there. They're having a wedding. They're having a wedding. And therefore, the candles is the siman that it's going to be a wedding today, and everyone knows where to go, and everyone takes care of it. This is, by the way, the Makar. This is a source for Ashkenazim. If you ever see by some of their weddings, they walk down the Hatan and the Kala, and the parents are holding candles. You ever saw that before? Parents are holding candles, and they say this is the Makar from this Gemara, that it says that in this city, they used to walk around, they used to put up candles in order to indicate that it's going to be a wedding. Okay, one more piece, and then we'll be done for today. Tanu Rabbanan. Tzedek Tido. Halach achar chachamim l'shiva. You gotta go to the chachamim that are in the yeshiva. You want to go to the betin that's the best? You go to the betin that's in the yeshiva. I remember Rav Belsky, Rosh Yeshiva, he had a betin in the yeshiva. People always coming all the time. And that's the best place to go. Why? Because you can have betins anywhere, right? But the betins that are in yeshiva, that's where all the chidushei Torah, that's where all the big learnings are going. Those are the people who are reviewing it all the time. That's the betin you want to go to. And the Gemara gives example: Ahadabi Elazar Lod, Ahadabi Yohanan Bezekai Lerohayel, Ahadabi Yeshua Lefikin, Ahad Rabban Gamliel Leavne, Ahadabi Akiva Lerak, Ahadabi Mirma. What did I miss here? Achar Rabbi Matya Leromi, Rabbi Matya in Rome, Achar Rabbi Hanina ben Tavdion Stichni, Rabbi Chaim ben Tavdion Stichni, Achar Rabbi Yosid Spori, Achar Rabbi Yehuda ben Teral in Tivin, Achar Rabbi Shual Legola, Achar Rabbi Lebet She'arim, Achar Chachamim Lishchat Hagazit. And the final place, the most important place, is the Lishkat Hagazit. That is where the Sanhedrin Agadol was. That's where the main source of halacha and psak came from. Therefore, the best place to have gone would have been to the Lishkat Hagazit, where the Sanhedrin is sitting, and they are the source of halacha for everyone and for everything. Therefore, that would be the best place. Consider yeshiva, all the great chachamim are sitting and learning. And I think before we close for today, you turn with the Ramban writes, and it's a Garrett the Ramban. And Garrett the Ramban writes that every time you learn something, you have to take something with it, right? No matter what you learn, you have to see how it's going to affect my life. From this last piece of Gemara that says you have to go after the chachamim in the yeshiva, teaching us a very important thing. You know, today the social media is flooded with influencers, right? You have influencers on Instagram, Facebook, on whatever other medias that they have. And they talk all sorts of things. Sometimes they're right. Sometimes they have truth. But where is the source of it all? Where is it coming from? The person has a choice to listen to an hacham, a Rosh Yeshiva, a gadol, a maggid shir, someone who's been in the yeshiva world, someone who knows what he's talking about, someone who didn't just wake up yesterday and start teaching, someone who has a mesorah, has a banim, or you can go to a person who's an influencer. Then where do you go? The choice should be very clear. You go to the Rosh Yeshiva, you go to the place of Gadol, you go to those who are legit, because those are the legit chachamim. At one point, I remember someone asking me once, there's this motivational speaker, Tony Robbins. And he was asking if it's mutar to listen to him or not. I said it's not. It's probably not asur. There's no real isser to listen to Tony Robbins. The guy talks motivational stuff. I don't think he uses curse words or anything like that, and I don't think he talks about religion. Which, once you get into some religion stuff, that might already be problematic. Motivational speaker. But I told him, like it says here in the Gemara, I said, I don't know why you're going to Tony Robbins. You find a lot of chachamim, great chachamim, gedolim, that will motivationally inspire you, to change your life for the better and do great things. Recently I was listening to a podcast of some of these, conservative talk show hosts or speakers like that, and they were talking about marriage. It was on my playlist. I was at work. I was listening to it, and it was very interesting because they said a lot of things. But as I was listening to it, I'm like, okay, I heard that from Rav Pam. I heard that from Rav Pam with the source from the Torah. And I'm like, it's much better to learn it from the source of a Torah and a Rosh Yeshiva than hearing it from some guy on the street, because they may have it right now, the correct now, but maybe something else they're telling you that may not be correct. No, so I think that's a very important lesson to come out with from this week's Gemara, the last piece that we learned. That if you're gonna learn from someone, right, and you have a choice, choose the legit option. Okay. Any comments, any questions, or we can end it over here for today. All right. I'm gonna shut off the recording.